The Christmas cards lay scattered across my kitchen table, like the aftermath of some unimaginable crime. Faces smiled from glossy paper, perfectly coordinated in red and green sweaters, laughter frozen in time. But one face, the most precious of all, was gone. Maya. My 6-year-old granddaughter, my light after the loss of her parents, had been erased as if she had never existed. I traced the empty space where her gap-toothed grin should have been, my hands trembling. This wasn't just editing. This was deliberate, cold, calculated, and I couldn't let it go. My name is Eleanor Parker. I'm 68 years old, and I thought I'd seen every form of family drama the world could offer. But nothing had prepared me for this. It began 6 months ago. January 15th changed everything. My eldest son, David, and his wife, Sarah, died in a head-on collision on Interstate 95. David was 34, Sarah 32. Their daughter, Maya, my little miracle, was left behind. When Child Services called to ask if I could take custody, I didn't hesitate. Of course, I whispered into the phone, tears streaming down my cheeks. 3 days later, Maya arrived at my house carrying a small pink suitcase and her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts. She hadn't spoken since the accident, her big brown eyes wide with confusion and fear. I assumed my younger son, Mark, and his wife, Brittany, who lived just 2 miles away with their children. Connor and Lily, ages 10 and 8, would welcome Maya with open arms. Families rally together during tragedies, don't they? I was wrong. The first sign came at Maya's first family dinner at Mark and Brittany's house. The dining room was immaculate, polished, perfect, the kind of place that might appear on a magazine cover. Brittany's smile was sweet, warm, but her eyes were ice. Every time Maya spoke, Brittany's attention subtly shifted elsewhere. When Maya accidentally knocked over her water glass, Brittany's lips tightened into a sharp line. "Accidents happen," I said quickly, helping Maya clean up. "Yes," Brittany replied. Honeyed voice, masking a chill that cut deeper than words. Mark said nothing, focused on his steak, avoiding any interaction. Connor and Lily, usually full of chatter, were unusually quiet. The entire evening felt like walking through a field of hidden mines. One wrong move and everything could explode. That night, Maya climbed into my bed seeking comfort. "Grandma Ellie," she whispered, "why doesn't Aunt Brittany like me?" My heart shattered into pieces too small to count. How do you explain cruelty disguised as family loyalty to a 6-year-old who had already lost everything? I held her close, inhaling the faint scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Some people have small hearts, sweetheart," I said gently, "but my heart is big enough for all the love you need." She nodded against my chest, tears soaking through my nightgown. At that moment, I silently vowed I would never let anyone make her feel invisible again. But over the following months, Brittany's behavior became impossible to ignore. Passive aggression turned sharp, subtle exclusions, became deliberate erasures. Maya was left out of family group texts, forgotten at social events, seated awkwardly at birthday parties. Every time I confronted Mark, he waved me off. "Mom, you're being oversensitive," he said. "Brittany's just adjusting to having another child around. Give it time." Time. Since when did basic human decency require an adjustment period? Meanwhile, Maya slowly came back to life, her laughter returning, her voice finding strength again. She began kindergarten, made a best friend named Emma, and twirled in front of the mirror in her mismatched Christmas sweater, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond her joy. November brought the family photo session, Brittany's idea of a perfect holiday memory, at Morrison Photography. She bought matching sweaters for everyone except Maya. When I insisted she be included, Brittany produced a sweater for my granddaughter, clearly purchased as an afterthought, the wrong shade of red. Maya didn't care. She twirled in front of the mirror, ecstatic to be part of the family. The photographer even commented on her expressive eyes, predicting she'd be a heartbreaker one day. I noticed a flicker of darkness in Brittany's eyes but dismissed it. Surely even she wouldn't cross certain lines. I was wrong. December 15th. I opened the envelope containing our Christmas cards. My stomach plummeted. Maya was gone. Not cropped, not blurred, erased. 50 cards sent to family and friends announcing her non-existence. The shadows had been adjusted. Connor and Lily now appeared to hold hands in her place. Every single card had been digitally altered. I called Morrison Photography. Mr. Morrison said carefully, "She requested those edits. There was a family disagreement, and she asked us to remove the little girl. $300. She had spent $300 to erase my granddaughter." I sank into my kitchen chair, the same chair where I had first seen those cards. I couldn't breathe. The house seemed too quiet, the Christmas lights too dim, as if the world itself had paused to witness this cruelty. And then the front door opened. Maya bounded in, cheeks flushed from the December cold. Her eyes took in the scattered cards, and confusion replaced joy. "Grandma," she whispered, holding a card. "Where am I?" I lifted her onto my lap, holding her close so she could feel the warmth of my arms and the certainty of love. "You were there, sweetheart," I said gently. "Someone removed you from the pictures on purpose." Her small hands clutched the card tighter, her wide eyes searching mine for understanding. "Who would do that? Why don't they want me in the family pictures?" Her voice cracked like a fragile note in a silent room. I swallowed, steadying myself. "Some people are scared of differences, Maya. Some people choose hate instead of love, but that's their problem, not yours." She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes, and I could see the confusion battling with her understanding. The seed of self-doubt had been planted, and it would take all the love in the world to uproot it. That evening, I called Mark. "We need to talk about the Christmas cards," I said, voice firm, leaving no room for avoidance. He hesitated. "Distracted, Mom." "I'm in the middle of something. Can it wait?" "No," I said. "You need to act." Silence stretched over the line like a heavy fog. "Mom, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation." He started weak and defensive. "Reasonable explanation." I snapped, fury rising. "Your wife paid $300 to have my granddaughter erased from our family photos. Your daughter? My granddaughter has been erased from existence." Another pause, heavy and reluctant. "It's complicated, Mom. Brittany's been under stress." I could hear him fumbling for excuses, grasping at straws to defend the indefensible. "We all have stress," I said, my voice steady but slicing, "but we don't use it as an excuse to harm innocent children. You need to stand up. Demand she apologizes. Fix this." 2 days passed without a single word from Mark or Brittany. Their silence was deafening, and I realized I could no longer wait. I drove to Morrison Photography that Thursday morning and requested copies of the original unedited photographs. Mr. Morrison, clearly uncomfortable, printed them immediately. "Mrs. Parker, in 30 years of family photography, I've never had a request like this. It troubled me deeply," he admitted. I took the envelope with me, determination hardening in my chest. My next stop was FedEx, where I had the originals blown up to poster size. The young clerk commented, "That little girl has such a sweet smile." "Yes," I said tightly, my fingers brushing over the photograph of Maya she does. That afternoon, Maya returned from school, subdued, picking at cookies, while asking tentative questions about the Christmas cards. "Grandma Ellie, are we having Christmas dinner at Uncle Mark's house this year?" Her innocent voice cracked my heart all over again. "Yes, sweetheart, we are," I replied, keeping my tone light, but my mind was racing. Brittany's lavish dinner was supposed to be a celebration, an image-perfect event. But this year, I had a plan of my own. I would not allow Maya to be humiliated, ignored, or erased in front of the people who should have protected her. Friday evening, Mark finally called, voice strained. "Mom, Brittany and I have discussed the situation. Have you now?" His hesitation betrayed the discomfort I knew had been building for months. "Yes," I said calmly. "I have." She feels terrible about the misunderstanding with the photos. She says it was never her intention to hurt Maya's feelings. My hands tightened around the phone. Misunderstanding. As if accidentally erasing a child's very existence could ever be called a mistake. "Too late," I said. "We will handle this ourselves. Tonight Maya will see her rightful place at the table, and Brittany will see the consequences of her choices." Christmas morning arrived crisp with a pale winter light dusting the garden in silver. Maya burst into my bedroom at 6:30 a.m., bouncing with infectious excitement. Presents were opened, hot chocolate was sipped, and laughter filled our home. But the shadow of the previous year's cruelty lingered in my mind. I had a surprise for Brittany, something she would never forget and something that would make the world see the truth of what she had done. As we prepared to leave for Mark and Brittany's house that afternoon, I could see Maya's anxiety. "Will Aunt Brittany be nice to me?" she asked, small and uncertain. I knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I can't control her sweetheart, but I can promise you one thing: I will always stand up for you." She nodded, trusting me completely, and I knew in that moment that I would not fail her. Not now, not ever. The Parker house gleamed under the winter sunlight decorations, perfectly arranged the dining room table, set as if for a magazine spread. Maya held my hand tightly as we stepped inside her red velvet dress, a contrast to the neutral elegance of Brittany's white and gold Christmas scheme. Guests greeted us with polite smiles that barely hid their curiosity, their eyes flicking over Maya as if she were an unexpected element in a well-rehearsed scene. Connor and Lily glanced at her puzzled but remained quiet. The air was thick with tension, a brittle calm that felt like it might shatter at any moment. Dinner began under the hum of polite conversation, the clinking of cutlery and the soft strains of classical music playing from hidden speakers. Brittany moved about the room, her every gesture measured her smile bright and practiced. Yet I could see it something sharp lurking behind the veneer of charm. Her carefully orchestrated image of a perfect family teetered as soon as Maya sat down in her place. She tried to guide the conversation away from her stepdaughter, but the child's presence could not be ignored, and Brittany's discomfort rippled across the table like a warning in the water. As the main course ended and Brittany brought out her famous tiramisu, conversation turned to the Christmas cards. "Brittany, your family photo was absolutely gorgeous this year," Linda Roberts' wife gushed. "Such a perfect representation of your beautiful family." Brittany's chest swelled with pride. "Thank you, Linda. Morrison Photography always does such excellent work," she said, her tone sweet, but there was a tension there, a sharp edge I recognized immediately. Maya tilted her head, sensing something wrong, and squeezed my hand. I stood breaking the polite hum of the room. "Brittany, I have a Christmas gift for you," I said, placing a large, carefully wrapped package on the table. The room fell quiet, all eyes following as she reached forward, her fingers brushing the paper, curiosity dancing in her eyes. When she lifted the wrapping, the silence thickened. Inside was a large frame holding two photographs side by side. One was the original family photo from the studio, Maya, standing proudly between Connor and Lily, her gap-toothed grin lighting up the image. The other was the version Brittany had sent out to everyone. Maya erased entirely, the background filled seamlessly as though she had never existed. Brittany froze, her face shifting from a practiced pink to a ghostly gray. "What is this?" she whispered, barely audible, though everyone at the table could hear. "Your Christmas gift," I said, voice calm, warm but deadly in its precision. I thought everyone should see both versions of our family photo, the real one and the one you edited. Eyes widened around the table. Jennifer, Brittany's sister, leaned forward, incredulous. Linda gasped. Connor and Lily exchanged glances, sensing a fracture in their mother's carefully maintained world. I pressed gently but firmly. "Did you know you spent $300 to professionally erase a 6-year-old orphan from her own family cards?" The room held its breath. Brittany's composure crumbled. She opened her mouth, trying to speak, then faltered. "This is taken out of context," she started. I gestured toward the photographs. "Please, Brittany, explain to everyone why you removed Maya from her own family's Christmas cards." Her eyes darted, searching for some refuge, some justification that didn't exist. None came. The mask had fully fallen, and for the first time everyone saw the woman behind the sweet smile. Maya, small and brave, finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. Aunt Brittany, why did you take me out of the picture? Did I do something wrong? The question landed like a hammer blow. Brittany's mouth opened and closed, her face paling further, and I realized that in that moment truth had won a battle that fear and malice could not. The guests leaned in, waiting. The silence was heavy, pregnant with judgment, and Brittany's inability to answer spoke louder than any denial ever could. The room was still the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes each heartbeat loud in your ears. Brittany's fingers fidgeted at the edge of the table, her carefully manicured nails betraying a nervous tremor. I was thinking about the family's image, she finally muttered, her voice small, unsteady. The way people perceive us, about the children's futures. Her words trailed off, swallowed by the weight of what she had done. Connor and Lily exchanged confused glances, their mother's reasoning completely incomprehensible to them. Jennifer, her sister, leaned in cautiously. Britt, you're saying all of this just to control what other people think? Brittany's eyes flickered with guilt, but also a stubborn defiance. Yes, it's about maintaining appearances. It's about protecting us, she insisted, though the conviction sounded hollow even to her own ears. The room had grown heavy with judgment, the polite smiles long gone, replaced by the sharp clarity of truth. Robert and Linda, still seated, looked as though they had just witnessed a storm roll in its destructive power, contained within a simple frame of photographs. I knelt down to Maya's level, brushing a strand of hair from her eyes. Sweetheart, she made a choice that had nothing to do with you. Some people are afraid of differences, and fear can turn into cruelty, I said gently. Maya's eyes filled with tears, but there was understanding there, a seed of resilience. So, I didn't do anything wrong, she asked softly. Nothing at all. You are perfect, just the way you are. I reassured her, holding her close. Her small hands clutched my sweater, grounding her in the reality that she was loved and visible. Mark, who had been sitting silently, finally raised his head. His face was pale, the fork in his hand forgotten. Brittany, what were you thinking? He asked, voice tight-controlled but trembling with disbelief. Brittany turned to him, her composure now fully gone, tears welling in her eyes. I was protecting the family, she repeated, as if that mantra could absolve months of cruelty, thousands of dollars spent on a private investigator, and the emotional torment inflicted on an innocent child. Mark shook his head, the weight of betrayal settling over him like a heavy coat. Connor, usually quiet and reserved, spoke up with a child's brutal honesty. Mom Maya's our cousin. Why wouldn't we want her in our pictures? His voice, small but piercing, seemed to echo through the room. Brittany's mouth opened again, searching for words, and found none. Even the adults present could feel the simplicity and power of that truth innocence, seeing through the complicated justifications of cruelty. I rose from my chair, my hand still holding Maya's. This is the consequence of your choices, Brittany, I said calmly, deliberately, making sure each word landed. Maya will always have people who fight for her, who see her, who love her exactly as she is. You cannot erase her. You cannot manipulate what family really means. And tonight everyone here has witnessed that. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with confrontation and revelation. Brittany sank back into her chair, her hands covering her face, the fragile facade of control completely shattered. The remaining guests were quiet, processing the spectacle. Some shifted in their seats, unsure of what to say, while others, like Jennifer and Linda, exchanged knowing glances, silently acknowledging the gravity of what had just been revealed. Maya nestled closer to me, her small body trembling slightly, but her spirit seemingly untouched by the cruelty she had endured. For the first time in months, she could see the strength of truth standing firmly in her corner. The aftermath of that Christmas dinner hung over the house like a dense fog, but for the first time in months, it felt like the storm had passed. Maya sat beside me on the couch, her small hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate, the whipped cream melting into the rich chocolate below. "Grandma, will Aunt Brittany ever like me?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with both hope and fear. I stroked her hair gently, considering my words. "Sweetheart, some people never learn to see the good in others. That's their problem, not yours. But you have people who love you who always will. That's what matters." Mark appeared in the doorway, the exhaustion etched into his face. He sank into the armchair across from us, rubbing his temples. "Mom, I should have seen this sooner. I should have protected her from all of it," he admitted, voice heavy with guilt. I took his hand across the coffee table. "Mark, acknowledging it now means you'll act differently moving forward. That's what counts." He nodded, eyes misted, and for the first time I saw him stepping into the kind of man I'd always hoped he would become. The days that followed were a whirlwind of phone calls, emails, and meetings. I worked with Morrison Photography to retrieve the original prints of the family photos and have them reproduced. The studio staff, visibly shaken by the events, offered to send corrected Christmas cards to everyone on Brittany's original list, free of charge. Mr. Morrison handed me the envelopes personally, saying, "Mrs. Parker, it's rare to see someone so determined to protect the innocence of a child. You're doing the right thing." I nodded, the weight of the previous months pressing on my shoulders, but buoyed by the knowledge that Maya would finally see herself reflected in her family. Mark's divorce from Brittany progressed quickly once the truth about her surveillance and manipulations was revealed. Her efforts to portray me as an unfit guardian collapsed under the evidence of her obsession and the support of witnesses who had seen her behavior firsthand. Connor and Lily began spending weekends with us, building a relationship with Maya that was warm, unforced, and free of toxic influence. Watching the three children laugh together in the backyard, racing among the flower beds we'd planted in spring, was like witnessing a small miracle unfold. One quiet afternoon, I watched Maya chase a butterfly through the garden, her laughter ringing out like chimes in the breeze. She paused, holding the delicate creature in her small hands, and looked up at me with awe. "Grandma, look, it's beautiful, just like our family." She whispered, her words carrying more weight than I could have imagined. I hugged her tightly, feeling the sun warm our shoulders, and realized that these moments of joy, love, and unshakable loyalty were the proof of resilience against cruelty. The experience had changed all of us. Mark had stepped into a new role as a protective father, more present, more aware of the family dynamics he had previously ignored. Connor and Lily were learning the value of empathy and inclusion, seeing firsthand how damaging exclusion and prejudice could be. And Maya, my brave little girl, was beginning to blossom, knowing her place in the world was secure and her worth undeniable. That Christmas, the cards from last year were filed away, a painful reminder of cruelty and the lengths some people go to in order to control perception. But in their place, new cards, authentic and complete, spread Maya's joyful smile across the world, announcing not just a holiday greeting, but a triumph of truth and love. I watched her running back toward the house, cheeks flushed from the winter air, and I realized something profound. Family isn't measured by appearances or perfection. It's measured by who shows up when it matters most, who fights for love when the world tries to erase it, and who refuses to let fear dictate their heart. The new year brought a quiet sense of peace to our household. Snow blanketed the garden in soft white layers, and Maya's laughter echoed through the crisp winter air as she built snow angels, her tiny boots leaving perfect prints in the untouched powder. Even Mark seemed lighter, the weight of guilt and indecision finally lifted after confronting the reality of Brittany's cruelty and taking decisive action. Our home was alive with warmth, not just from the crackling fireplace, but from the comfort of knowing Maya's place in the family was no longer in question. One morning, as I prepared breakfast, Maya wandered into the kitchen holding her silver locket, the one we'd given her at Christmas. "Grandma, I put Mommy and Daddy in here," she said, touching the small photos tucked inside. "Now they're always with me." Her innocence was heart-stopping, a reminder of the fragility of children who have already endured more heartbreak than most adults. I knelt beside her, tracing the delicate outline of her hand. And no one can ever take that away from you, sweetheart. Not even Brittany. Mark joined us carrying 2 mugs of steaming cocoa. He placed one in front of Maya, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Mom, thank you for standing up for her," he said quietly. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." I smiled gently. Sometimes the people who can't fight for themselves need someone to step in. That's all I did. He nodded, his eyes glinting with a mixture of relief and newfound resolve. For the first time, I felt like the family we were meant to be, flawed, yes, but resilient and fiercely protective of one another. Life slowly returned to a rhythm that felt safe and nourishing. Maya began first grade at a new school, one with a diverse student body where her biracial identity was celebrated rather than questioned. She made friends effortlessly, her natural warmth drawing others to her. Connor and Lily, now spending weekends with us, began forming genuine bonds, with her sharing game secrets and laughter that didn't feel forced or cautious. Their innocence, once tainted by their mother's prejudice, was starting to flourish in a home built on love rather than appearances. One afternoon, as the children played quietly in the garden, Mark and I sat together on the porch, steaming mugs in hand. "It's amazing, isn't it?" he said, watching Maya chase a butterfly across the yard. "How she can be so strong after everything." I nodded, squeezing his hand. "Children are resilient, Mark, but they need protection, guidance, and above all, people who refuse to let them be erased. That's how she survived. That's how she'll thrive." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and painted the sky in soft gold and rose, I watched Maya carefully release a butterfly we'd been observing. "Go, little one," she whispered, her tiny voice carrying a gravity far beyond her years. I realized then that the butterfly was more than a creature of wings and color. It was a symbol of survival, transformation, and freedom. Maya, despite all attempts to erase her, had emerged unbroken. And so had we, her family united not by perfection, but by love, courage, and a refusal to let cruelty dictate the truth. The lesson was clear. Life will test us sometimes in ways that seem unbearable. But resilience is forged not in safety, but in standing up against injustice, protecting those who cannot protect themselves, and choosing love when the world offers fear. Maya's laughter carried across the garden as I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, realizing that we had not just survived Brittany's hatred, we had risen above it stronger, closer, and more deeply aware of the true meaning of family. As the weeks turned into months, the tension that had once haunted our holidays faded like mist under the morning sun. Brittany had retreated completely from our lives, her attempts to erase Maya reduced to memories we barely whispered about. Mark, now fully aware of the responsibility of standing up for what was right, focused on being the father Maya needed, and Connor and Lily began to see a world beyond their mother's fear of difference. Our home, once heavy with silent unease, now rang with laughter, chatter, and the unmistakable rhythm of life lived in honesty and love. One warm spring afternoon, Maya and I sat on the porch swing, painting small ceramic pots for her garden. "Grandma," she asked thoughtfully, her tiny brush dipping into bright blue paint, "why did Aunt Brittany not like me?" I paused, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Because, sweetheart, some people are afraid of things that are different from them. They don't know how to love something that isn't exactly like them. But that's her problem, not yours. And it never will be as long as you have people who do love you." She smiled softly, the weight of her question balanced by the reassurance surrounding her. Mark came outside holding a small envelope. "Look what arrived today," he said, kneeling beside Maya. She opened it with curiosity, pulling out a bundle of corrected Christmas cards from Morrison Photography. Every photo now showed Maya smiling in the front row, her place in the family officially recognized. "We didn't need anyone else to tell us," I said, placing a hand on her small shoulder. "We've always known you belong." Maya's face lit up in delight, the joy in her eyes spilling over like sunlight on the garden path. That night, as the children lay sleeping upstairs, Mark and I sat quietly in the living room. "I've never felt more proud to be your son," he said, his voice low but earnest. "You taught me that family isn't about appearances or what people think. It's about who shows up, who protects, who loves without condition." I reached for his hand, holding it firmly. "And you've learned that too, Mark. Now it's your turn to teach your children, Connor and Lily, what true family really means." Weeks later, Maya's laughter filled the kitchen once again as she prepared breakfast with me. She had grown in ways that no one could have predicted, her confidence blooming from the safety and love we had provided. She understood now in ways both tender and profound that being different was not a weakness, but a strength, that love was not conditional, and that no one could erase her from the family she had earned. Watching her, I realized that we had all been reborn through the trials of the past year, stronger, wiser, and bound by an unshakable bond that cruelty could never sever. And so as the sun set on another quiet evening, I whispered a promise to Maya. "No matter what anyone tries, you will always be seen. You will always be loved, and you will always have a place where you belong." She hugged me tightly, and for a moment the weight of the past year lifted completely. Love had triumphed, truth had prevailed, and a young girl who had once been erased now stood firmly at the center of the family, shining brighter than ever. Life is unpredictable. People can hurt, manipulate, and try to erase what they fear or don't understand. But the strongest bonds, the ones built on love, courage, and protection, cannot be broken. Sometimes the most important battles are not fought in courts or through confrontation, but in the simple, unyielding act of standing up for those who cannot fight for themselves. That's the lesson Maya taught me, and it's the lesson I hope you carry with you. Protect love, protect truth, protect the innocent, and never ever let cruelty define who you are. If you found this story moving, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. How do you stand up for the ones you love? Your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard.